Hi everyone, I think all of you are in the pink of health. Today I shall discuss an important organ which is very essential for speech, taste and different types of sound, and that organ is the tongue. All of you know that during the development in the intrauterine life, that means this is the embryo of the 5th week. Now in this 5th week embryo, you will see this is the head end and this is the developing neck. And in this developing neck, in this view, you can see this is much enlarged view. You can see the development of the pharyngeal arches. Now these arches, they are on the two sides, they develop. Gradually these arches goes forwards and they unite in the midline. So after union at the midline, what you will see, I have drawn a model where I have discussed that the first arch is the sectional view, that is the red color, second is the yellow color, third is the blue color, fourth is the orange color and the sixth is the green color. So I have done these both arches fused together to form the horseshoe shaped mass from which the tongue develops. Not only the tongue, the floor of the mouth is developed. I have made, you will see the tongue. This is the mandible and you will see there is the developing tongue. Now how this tongue is developed? Now you know the first arch is also known as the mandibular arch. From this midline of the mandibular arch, there is appearance of two swelling, that means aggregation of the tissue of different varieties which is initiated by the gene and the gene also command on the marker. So there is the lingual swelling, the tissue, the tongue, you will see there is endoderm, there is muscles of the tongue and there is also the stroma of the tongue which binds the muscle or the fibrous tissue of the tongue. Now this lingual swelling, it develops at the 4th week of intrauterine life, and you will see behind there is development of the another elevation at the junction of the first arch and the second arch, and this elevation is known as the tuberculum impart. Impart means unpaired. Anything, you will see the ganglionatic sympathetic trunk, when it ends it is known as the ganglion impart. That means the unpaired organ. Now this tuberculum impart and the lingual swelling, from these three parts the anterior 2/3 of the tongue is developed. If you protruded your tongue, or you can take within the tongue and you can move, you can actually make a big orifice of the mouth, you can visualize all the things, that how the anterior 2/3 and the posterior 1/3 are separated. There is a sulcus, but before seeing the visualizing the sulcus, you can see that there are some elevated mass, about 2 to 3 millimeter type of elevation, and they are known as the circumvallate papilla, which is important taste organ, that is situated at the junction of the anterior 2/3 and the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. So anterior 2/3 of the tongue is developed from the two lingual swelling and the tuberculum impart. Now, you see later on I shall discuss the nerve supply of the tongue, which is according to the development. Next you will see in the second arch, third arch and the fourth arch, there is development of another eminence, which it is represent here, the pink color eminence. And this is known as the hypobranchial eminence. Now you will see the third arch actually grows over the second arch, few of the tissues, and you will see some second arch tissue is submerged. Now at the junction of the hypobranchial eminence, the cranial part of the hypobranchial eminence forms the posterior 1/3 of the tongue, which when you look in your tongue in the mirror or the other's tongue in the home, you will see there is the irregular elevation, not regular, and that is recognized as the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. Now posterior most of the tongue, you will see where there are two depression is present, which is known as the relicula of the tongue, that is developed actually from the migration of the tissue from the, that is the fourth arch, and also and you will know how the nerve supply and the muscles of the tongue are developed. This is the endodermal derivatives. So endodermal derivatives gives the tongues, develop the tongue, mucous membrane, papilla, all the things are developed from here. Now the muscles of the tongue, which is very strong, you see the tongue, in your tongue it is very thick, and this muscle comes from the somoid, which is known as occipital myotome. From the occipital 4 to 5 myotome comes forward, and ultimately it develops the muscles of the tongue. So it derives its nerve supply from the occipital myotome, that is in this region the nerve supply is the 12th cranial nerve of hypoglossal nerve. So all the muscles of tongue are nerve supply is the hypoglossal nerve except palatoglossal. Next thing you will see the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. You will see the muscles at the same derivative, but the mucous membrane it is different. So if we consider the sensation of the tongue, our tongue is very much sensory. So you will see not only sensory, you can touch the tongue. If you will see too much of hot water or hot tea, you will see it will burn your tongue and you will feel some difficulty in the mucous membrane becomes eroded. So anterior 2/3 of the tongue, as it is developed from this arch, is known as the first arch or the mandibular arch. So the nerve supply of this arch is the mandibular nerve. Here the lingual branch of the mandibular nerve supplies the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. Now the taste bud, you will see the anterior 2/3 of the tongue, there is the taste bud, and you will see the different taste. You will like the good taste and you will don't like the bitter one. The different varieties of taste sensation, the taste sensation of the grilled chicken is different, the fried chicken is different. So all these varieties of sensation is taken by the taste bud, and the name of the nerve is the chorda tympani nerve. Now this chorda tympani nerve is the branch of the facial, which is the nerve of the second pharyngeal arch, that is the yellow color arch. So this arch has got two division. The nerve has got two division. One is known as pre-traumatic and the another is known as the post-traumatic. So this is the pre-traumatic of the facial nerve which forms the chorda tympani, and this is the second one is the facial nerve. So taste sensation is carried by the chorda tympani branch of the fascia. Now posterior 1/3 of the tongue, as it is developed from the hypobranchial eminence, you will see the nerve supply of the third arch, that means this blue arch, the third arch, that is the glossopharyngeal nerve. So here the posterior 1/3 of the tongue is both the general sense and the special sense are carried by the glossopharyngeal nerve. You will see the glossopharyngeal nerve only tastes the bitter. You will take the bitter, you will see, you will feel it in the posterior 1/3 of the tongue more. But you cannot feel the sweet, sour in the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. That is not carried by the glossopharyngeal nerve. So this is the nerve supply of the tongue according to its development. Now when the tongue is developed, you will see this is a mass of tissue. You will see here this is the mass of the tissue. Have you got the look of the mass of the tissue? This is the mass of the tissue. One cannot move the tongue. So in the hip, you will see the hip of the sand, there is formation of the groove, and this groove is the alveolo-lingual groove. And you see the mandible, there is the groove of the teeth. So due to the development of the alveolo-lingual groove, this tongue gradually becomes free from the floor of the mouth, and you will see it is protruded like this. So in this way our tongue becomes free, and the inferior aspect of the tongue is connected by means of a mucous membrane which is known as the frenulum linguae. When you will lift your tongue, you will touches the tip of the tongue to the hard palate, then you can see the frenulum linguae. So this is how the tongue is formed and how it is free from the floor of the mouth. Now what is the clinical anatomy or the applied anatomy of this development of the tongue? There are many applied anatomy, but important is the ankyloglossia, that means tongue tie. Important because you will see that it is important because you will see that if there is the tongue tie, the speech is not clear, and this depends upon the amount of the tongue tie. Sometimes the speech is very much disturbed. So you will see in this photo, this is the figure of the tongue tie, how some small frenulum is there, and this person is not protruded his tongue. So this is the tongue tie, and you will see in the different condition there is the bifid tongue like the serpent, there is the hemiglossia, but this is not very common, this is very rare occasion you can see. But lingual thyroid you can see, which will be discussed later on. Thank you everybody.